Bernie Sanders' campaign says it will cut hours to pay staff $15 minimum wage. This after a report out last week that says workers were upset that Sanders championed $15 minimum wage on the campaign trail, but he made his own employees work at, quote, poverty wages. Here to discuss, Independent Women's Foreign Policy Director Hadley Heath Manning. I just think Bernie really stepped in it, I think, on this one, Hadley. It's his solution is the same solution that many small businesses have complained about for a long time. Less hours and maybe less people are going to get jobs.
That's right. Some people calling this ironic. I've got another word for it. It's hypocritical when a senator like Bernie Sanders suggests that every business in the country should pay $15 an hour as a minimum wage, and then he turns around and pays less than that to his campaign workers. And then, in order to increase the minimum wage for his campaign workers to $15 an hour, he has to cut the working hours of those people, which means, of course, at the end of the day, they're still taking home the same amount of money. They haven't seen an increase in their total compensation. This is one of the arguments that critics of minimum wage increases frequently make, is that when you increase the cost of labor, and this is totally common sense, you're going to be able to buy less labor. And the extreme example, of course, is when employers have to totally eliminate jobs. And the CBO recently came out with a report that said, if you raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, as Senator Sanders supports, then you're going to get about 1.3 million jobs eliminated from the American economy. That means those people are making $0 an hour.
Yeah, that same report, though, said if you went to the more extreme possible outcome, it could be 3.7 million jobs. So 1.3 million minimum. But even having said that, think about this. So workers making $13 an hour, they were working 60 hours. Obviously, they're going to make a lot less right now. But it's hard to imagine on the campaign, people who are dedicated to this campaign, they're not going to really work less hours, right? So they'll get paid for 40, but they're still going to probably put in those same 60 hours.
Well, the campaign is looking in response to raising the hourly wage on average to $15 an hour. They're looking to limit the number of workers that workers are working. Now, on the flip side, you could argue that this frees up some of the time that campaign workers are working. Maybe they can go get a second job in order to make more money. But at the end of the day, many minimum wage workers are people who are working part-time, or they're students, or they're members of a household where other people are also bringing in income. So this depiction of minimum wage workers as, people who are in a career job, heads of households, trying to, provide for their families. Of course, their income is important. But on the whole, largely minimum wage workers are members of households that are making a lot more money than minimum wage earnings. Yeah. So that's something that policymakers have to keep in mind.
Well, beyond policymakers, though, in politics, we do know that there's traction for this. There is something about the notion of fairness, the notion that the rich have gotten richer, the notion that there's some sort of massive imbalance in this country between the haves and have-nots, and whether or not Bernie, got burned on this or not, that's not going to go away. What do you make of that?
That's a powerful message that Senator Sanders and other Democrats are taking, whether you call it class warfare, or if there's certainly a legitimate point to what you're raising, Charles, and that is that there are limited opportunities for some people in our country. And so I think we have to address this through making sure there's equal opportunities for everyone, whether that's through education reform, whether that's through making sure that people can be retooled and retrained later in their careers if they find themselves in a type of industry that has changed or that is outsourced to foreign countries. We have to be sure that people have the skills and the education that they need in order to increase their productivity, increase their earnings. That's really the way forward to, close that gap that you're talking about, rather than simply forcing employers to pay more per hour. You start pulling those levers, and they're going to make changes exactly like the Bernie Sanders campaign has done.
Yeah, next thing you know, you pulled a few trap doors to employment altogether. Hadley, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.